Welcome to the Inflection Podcast, where we explore the pivotal moments that have shaped us into who we are today. I am your host, Anebi, and I can't wait to dive into these moments with you. Let's get it. All right, welcome to this episode of the Inflection Podcast. It's a pleasure to have the man, the myth, the legend, Joel Polanco with me today. Longtime product veteran and a thought leader in the product space. He created a lot of great content and thought leadership around product and business. You've built your career over the past 2 decades at Intel and advised a bunch of startups on the side in the areas of product, GTM, and whatnot. And it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a long time coming. We talked about this a while back.
It's been a long time.
So thank you. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. One angle I want to take today is blowing things up a bit or pulling back the curtain to talk about your product journey. A lot of product managers, product folks I talk with didn't grow up thinking, hey, someday I'm going to become a product manager, right? Usually it's accidental or a series of fortunate accidents along the way. So let's talk about yours. Like, you've been at Intel over 20 years at this point, and what did that look like getting in product in the first place?
Yeah, even if I go back before that, I don't think any schoolwork, where they're asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wrote down product manager. I think I wrote down actually, I wanted to be either a fireman or a professional bowler.
No way.
One of the two. So yeah, neither of those things ended up happening. But after I finished college at Arizona State, I wanted to go into manufacturing. And so here in Phoenix, Intel's a big manufacturer of semiconductors. And I really wanted to do that because I frankly at the time thought manufacturing was not going to be around in the United States. The trend was, continuous decline in manufacturing, and I might not get that opportunity again. So I started off in the fab. I wore the space suit. So
wow.
We wear a clean room suit, a bunny suit. And I was a process engineer. And so I was going in every day, and working on the tools. We call them tools. They're machines, processing chips or wafers that go through them, and, trying to make sure that they were up and producing.
Did you do the day shifts or the night shifts for that?
So I did the day shift. I was fortunate. I did some night shifts for training, and, that was really tough. Those nights, that you're basically working 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Oh man,
that
would mess up your circadian rhythm so bad.
Oh my gosh, it is. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart for sure. But I was on day shift, and I think I got to this point where I was looking outside of the fab and looking outside of the factory, and I wanted to try something else. I had come to a point in my career after about 6 years where I said, I can either stay here and just stay in the factory and kind of go after factory manager route or something like that, or I could go and explore other parts of the business.
Did Intel have at that point 2 different career tracks for even factory those wanted to stay IC individual contributor route versus managerial route, so like more technical, if you use that term, versus on the managerial side, or was it just?
Yes. And actually at all parts of Intel, they have that, that sort of track. And so on the IC path, though, it's very technical usually. So it's an engineer up to like a principal engineer level. And then on the IC, it's in some form of management.
Okay.
And, but I wanted to do something else. So I went back to school for my MBA, and I was hoping that would position me to be able to interview for something else. And I was either going to go into supply chain or marketing. I ended up going into marketing, and you could not have been any further from the fab in marketing. It was
that what you were going for though? Like something very different from the fab to augment your technical experience there, or was it again accidental in going that route?
I was intentional in that I wanted to go into either supply chain or marketing. Okay. And I was able to leverage like my analytics background as being an engineer, into marketing analytics. And so I worked on an operations team, and we spent most of our calories looking at consumer sales of PCs, tablets, and phones. And so I worked with folks doing forecasting. At one point, I had set the annual performance bonus for our consumer sales.
Wow.
So I got these really big opportunities.
All within Intel.
All
still.
within Intel.
So what did that look like? So you were at Intel, you went back to school, did your MBA while at Intel. You didn't go full time to the MBA and come back. You just did that on the side. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
that's a lot of work and hustle to make that happen.
that was tough. And my wife, she, bless her, like, for having the patience, because I was working 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. A lot of days, and then going to school twice a week from like 7 till 10. So yeah, it was some long days there for a while.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's super helpful.
But yeah, coming back to product though. So, I'd been in these analyst roles, and it got to a point where I was like a super user of these systems that IT had built. And because I knew them so well, in fact, I knew them so well, they started to come to me asking for requirements.
That's awesome.
Like, what do you think we should build next? And what do you think we should work on? And that positioned me for my next role, which was as a product manager in analytics. And so I was actually the one asking folks for requirements, or defining requirements, of working with the technical teams to develop our technicals, our analytics system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you started fleshing out requirements, helping them maybe build their backlog for stories to take on later on. How long did that last for you? And then where you're like, oh, I could see myself growing here as a product person versus maybe trying another career path.
Yeah, totally. So I think I was, probably a super user for maybe a year or two. And then an opportunity showed up with another team to actually lead the analytics team, and then build a team to focus on our CRM system, which was getting implemented, as well as to help with consumer sales data that I was a consumer of. And I did that for about 2 years. And as I started doing that, I began to dawn on me, like, wow, at this point I've been at Intel like 12 years or so.
Yeah.
And I'd actually never really talked to a customer. I said, I want to go actually try to go build a product that's consumed by a customer outside of the walls.
Yeah.
And they actually have to pay for, we're actually going to make revenue on. And so then I moved over to the Internet of Things group, and that's where I've been ever since. It's currently called the Network and Edge group, but basically the group that I'm in, we focus on all the chips that go into things that are not a laptop, a desktop, or a server. So these could be anything from a slot machine to a point of sale system.
Oh, wow. It's Intel's. So it's very fascinating to me. Like, when I think of Intel, right, I think processors, microprocessors, and the chips, wafers. But it seems around, that's the core, but there are a bunch of other services and necessary services that Intel provides. Like you just mentioned, IoT, edge computing, and things like that. Like, within Intel, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Are they like a bunch of teams, working on different projects? Obviously, I would assume some get spun up, some get retired, but there's a core, services, line of businesses that Intel provides.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we have three main business groups. One is our consumer client group, and that's for your traditional laptop and desktop. Then you have our server or data center group, and then you have the group that I'm in, Network and Edge. And so these are processors and basically in our networks, our 5G networks, 4G networks, and any embedded markets. So it could be slot machines, point of sale, automotive, these other devices. But around that is a lot of software, actually. So we have a ton of software engineers, and we're involved largely in open source software or software that we basically couple with our processors to drive adoption. because in order for those software, in order for the hardware to run, you actually need some software to talk to that hardware.
Yeah.
And so we develop drivers. So this is APIs that communicate with our chips, and then we work with open source software communities. Like one example is the UXL Foundation. So we're partnered with Meta, ARM, and other companies to build open source software that allows you to build AI models on any processor.
Amazing.
And so you as a developer, say you're an AI developer, you shouldn't have to worry about learning a specific piece of software in order to write an AI model. And you shouldn't have to worry about which processor that runs on. And so we work on projects like that. So you have all sorts of projects like this that surround the core business. And we're always moving resources around depending upon the trends and the current trend, obviously.
Yeah. AI. It's inevitable to talk about AI these days. So let's talk through that. I know you have some really great ideas on AI. And when we were talking earlier, one of the things I talked about was I seldom or I hardly see an in-between tempered viewpoint of AI, depending on who I talk with. Some are more so on the pessimistic side. It's Pandora's box, which is some of that, and humanity will take all our jobs. Maybe that will happen eventually. But there's also the yes, AI is the best thing that's ever happened, which also there's a lot of pros to that. So like I'm being ambiguous on purpose. We can narrow it down to product and things you've seen there. But just what's your stance on AI in general, and then we can narrow it down.
Yeah, I think so on the comment of AI is going to take our jobs, I would argue that AI is going to take some of your tasks. Because is AI really going to take an entire job over? Maybe in some small cases, but is AI going to do a great job at processing math problems? Oh yeah, it's going to do a fantastic job at that. And so in the case of, I'll give you one example. I recently read an example where a startup is using Zapier and ChatGPT to augment their sales process. As leads come in through their website, they filter those leads. They determine if it's a workplace email. If it is, then they send a queue over to Slack, and they're doing a lot of work of what an SDR, a sales development rep, might do.
Yeah.
And so what that ends up doing for them is saving their cash burn, because now they don't have to have as many SDRs.
Oh, so, that's interesting. Okay.
So it's not necessarily replacing an SDR, but it's replacing a lot of the tasks that an SDR might do.
Yeah.
And then it saves them on headcount. But in the grand scheme of things, is that making things is that making things worse? No, I think it's just shifting the landscape.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it, because I've also seen as along those lines too, like it's a productivity booster if used appropriately, where for the SDRs, yes, they may need less SDRs over time because it's augmenting the work that the fewer SDRs they have, right? Instead of maybe processing through 10 requests, now they can do 30, or 40, right? So
exactly,
productivity goes up, but I think in the short term, there'll be, especially in some industries, contraction the numbers of roles there, because if one person can be 10x or more productive, then you need as many people, as many bodies doing those things. So that's an interesting point on that.
And another example too, someone gave this example where back in the day, you used to have elevator operators. I don't know if you've been in an elevator lately that has someone actually operating, they sat there and they operated and make sure, because actually it turns out there used to be a lot of elevator deaths apparently, because people weren't getting out on the right floor and then stopping it, and then just bad things would happen. You had to actually have but you don't have an elevator operator today, do you?
That's interesting. It was earlier we're talking about the example of horse-drawn carriages.
Horse-drawn carriage.
Yeah, where it's like, a bunch of those back in the day. And with the invention of the automobile, right, and the proliferation of that, and motorcycles and whatnot, like there was less demand for that. And a lot of those folks lost their jobs, like the folks who drove those things. But it's also created
But it
it-
created taxi cab drivers
yeah,
in some sense.
and
right?
mechanics to fix the automobiles.
And mechanics.
So it's very interesting. And that's it. That's how I'm looking at it, the short-term contraction in jobs potentially, or the need for certain folks in certain industries. But then I see so much more coming out of it as we look forward. Maybe industries we don't even know about yet, all kinds of jobs. Heck, I see listings now for prompt engineer.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That's a real job. Prompt engineer.
I don't know if you've seen a recent newsletter from Lenny's newsletter.
Yeah.
And he featured a prompt engineer, Mike Taylor, who wrote a book. And Mike is currently running an experiment to determine if AI is going to replace product management.
Interesting.
But he kind of gets into this concept of, no, AI is not going to replace people as much as it's going to replace tasks. And so the way that he's testing is, what are the tasks that a product manager has to do? How well can the AI produce the output from those tasks?
Yeah.
Like a PRD or a roadmap or things. And so he's going to then test that and measure that and compare the AI results versus the actual product manager to determine.
Yeah. I mean, even there are multiple companies now who are building AI agents or AI products to help product managers move a lot faster, a lot more efficient, write PRDs, write requirements, collect feedback at scale from users and process them and categorize them. Craftful is one of those. Yana Wellinder and the crew. Yana has been on this podcast. Thank you, Yana.
That's awesome.
For being on here. But I'm very bullish on companies like that building tools to enable product managers. So if you were already a good product manager, it'd just be a lot better at your product management gig, and maybe free up your time to actually talk with customers.
Yes.
This is being the weeds all the time, writing requirements. You can actually talk to more customers. I know earlier you were saying you had been at Intel for 12 years, and you're like, I need to start talking with customers and building products, revenue generating products. So imagine if you have more tools helping you to do some of the tasks, right? The administrative stuff, then you have more time to talk with customers and maybe even be able to process through, the sentiment of the conversation. How did this go? And things like that.
Totally. Yeah. I think, I accidentally found product management. So it kind of landed on me. I didn't land on it. It wasn't something I set out to do. And I wish I had some of these tools when I started. Because, man, I learned the hard way. And, you're working with your sales team and you're trying to understand kind of their motivations and the customer's motivation. And a lot of information now is recorded, and you wish you could, it'd be amazing to just get meeting minutes written for you. We have this tool at work where you can just send in your transcript and it creates meeting minutes within a minute. And it's off. You can't just
edit it a bit.
You gotta edit it. You don't just fire it away, but it's pretty amazing, and it saves you about 30 minutes of work.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's one I've used, personally called Crisp.ai.
Okay.
And it's a mixture of, it's noise cancellation. I know now multiple tools, Zoom and Google Meets, have a noise cancellation feature built in. But Crisp is pretty dang good in the sense that I could be in a noisy coffee shop, noisy cafe, airport, whatever, and it kills all the noise around me, just your voice. So it leaves that. It figures out a frequency, I think, and it just sticks it to your voice, and then everything else is drowned out. But they added the feature as well, which is AI transcript. So if a call 30 minute X amount of minutes, you're done, it gives a summary of the call, the things that we talked about, and also if there are any action items. So if I said, hey, Joel, by the time we're done, please don't forget to send me XYZ. So it's going to create a checklist of all those things. So just little things like that. Now I could still take notes if, that's how my comprehension goes up from here. But now I can go check, compare, maybe fill in the blank a bit, and then just shoot that out. It's already digitized for me.
Yes.
So there are use cases like that where it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and if you gravitate towards them and use them, but you have to experiment, right? You can't, or if you want to be on I think you're probably more on the early adopter side, and you end up teaching people, right? But there's other folks on the late adopter side that you end up teaching. But I think getting in on early and understanding how these things work is just can 10x.
So, what are some interesting anecdotes for you along the way, or the leaders you've worked with? It could even be from books or resources for you, in your product career or even in career in general, that maybe you go to often or you can't forget because it was that pivotal or influential in shaping you.
Yeah, I think one of the books that's really had an impact on me is from, and I'm a Cardinals fan. I hate to say this, Bill Walsh. Former 49ers head coach. He's just wrote an amazing book called The Score Takes Care of Itself.
The score takes care of itself.
Yes. And
it's interesting already.
Right. I another product leader had, provided a list of, here's my recommended books. And this book talks about the importance of every day, the importance of showing up, being prepared and executing well, knowing what great looks like, and then working towards that, and not from the perspective of the scoreboard looks great. When you're winning, you're winning, but the idea of when you're in the game, when you're in the daily meetings, when you're meeting with your coworkers, when you're meeting with your customers, every little interaction you're having is authentic, and you're listening, and you're validating people, and you're taking good notes and using AI tools and all these things. Basically, the score takes care of itself in the end. Yeah, I think your example resonates because, sometimes frankly, your product's not going to take off, or your service isn't, or your business isn't going to generate, a ton of money this quarter. But a lot of that's out of your control, is the reality. But did you show up every day? Did you do those things?
Yeah.
And give it your best, basically.
Full relationships are you building one by one? Yes, you may have some watershed moments where you get 300 connections of followers in one day because some posts took off or more. But ultimately, what are those little details and little interactions you can focus on improving, because it adds up over time. But I can see that concept tying to so many different things in life, not just with a startup or with a business.
For sure. Yeah. And so I'm a happy early adopter of LinkedIn Deal. So yeah, I think along those lines, like two things. One is someone told me, one of my mentors, is it's not about attention, it's about what is your intention. And
that's deep.
And your intention, if your intention is just to get attention, you could do that, but is that what you're really going after? And most people that do that aren't going to maybe feel fulfilled, or they're not going to achieve that outcome in the end. But if you're out, your intention is to help people, or to spread education, or just you have something to say to the world, then I think that's a good intention. And I think that the engagement comes with that.
I'm going to have to make a post on that alone. Like, if your intention is to get attention, what was the other part of that?
Then you may not feel fulfilled. You may not achieve that goal in the end, is kind of my guess.
I like it a lot.
But if you focus on your intention and what that is, then your audience will kind of show up and engage. You'll find your people.
That's cool. Ultimately, right, that's what we're doing. You're building a tribe of those like you, right, who doing the same things. And I'm like, that's cool. I see you. I
Yeah.
like that. And how do you do that without, I like to say, how do you grow on LinkedIn in this case without pitch slapping?
Yeah.
Some folks come in hot. You connect with them. I just connected with you a minute ago or an hour or whatever, same day. And you're like, hey, by the way, I have this product I'm selling. It's like, I just met you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
There's so many memes, so many great memes about that one. I love it.
about that, or about how ultimately can we connect intentionally with our audience, with our tribe of people like us, and that demystifies it a little bit.
And maybe you are selling something, but it's everyone's not in the market for your thing right now.
Do it like a
It's
human.
like, hey, I'm here, and if you need help with that, and I sell something that helps you, you just let you know I'm here. That's it,
Yeah.
And people will show up to buy when they're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. To bring it back to product a bit, like how does that look for you? Obviously, at year 12, you're like, I need to talk to customers. You pivoted slightly to working on revenue generating products, talking with a lot of customers. How do you, as a product veteran, like how do you build products that your users need, want, and perhaps probably need? And you need to convince them, right, or build cycles into it such that those users or those customers find that product. And sometimes it's a conundrum where a customer doesn't even know, or a potential customer doesn't know this is a need or something they'd love to pay for until you show them. That's why we have sales teams and marketing teams for awareness and then to close it. Well, from a product perspective, like what does that look like? Building products that your customers may not even realize they want yet, without being annoying and shoving down your throats because they need it, but they don't know that yet. So how do you cross that bridge, that divide of the chasm between awareness and getting it in the hands of your customers?
Yeah, I think in B2B world, a couple of things happen. One would be you're typically dealing with like committees. And so, you have to look at that committee and understand the different people within it. And so a lot of times someone needs your product, like maybe say someone in the operations department, go back to my IoT experience. They have an inventory problem or, they have some sort of waste problem, and your technology can help them reduce this waste or help them with their P&L. But then you're dealing with the purchasing department, you're dealing with the IT department. And so you have these other stakeholders you have to satisfy, and they don't see your solution for this other person as a solution. They see it more as a problem.
Yeah.
I need to go manage more IT devices So when approaching customers, I try to form a mental model of who's this committee, who are we talking to, and how can we categorize them and build personas around them and understand them and understand specifically what their concerns are, because you're not just dealing with one person, you're dealing with a whole committee.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So you need to help solve for that, and your sales team, they will understand that very well, but you also have to help them through that. And how do you get that built into the product? How do you get built in other requirements outside of your core use case, like these concerns that the IT department might?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is like, aside from the committees themselves, is actually like getting out there and talking to them and trying to connect with them and building a relationship and trying to build more of a collaboration. And as a product manager, I'm trying to let them know that I'm here to help them solve their problem. This isn't just about selling something to them, but rather like, I want to make sure that we are solving this problem. And this product is seen as a solution, is seen, as the old analogy is like, you have a painkiller, they have a pain and you have a painkiller for them. And if it's not a good fit, then you may not want to go and continue to pursue that. because, there's a whole world out there and other companies, and someone has this problem. It's just your job to go find them.
Yeah.
So, I like to approach it more as a collaboration, a partnership versus a transactional buying and selling situation.
Absolutely. People feel that stuff when it's transactional. I would assume the majority of people don't. When you feel sold to and it's transactional and commoditized, it can feel it can annoying. But when it's from the perspective of it's collaborative, you're here to work with them, you're listening to them. I think most people, me included, I appreciate that in products that I use and in companies that I'm a customer of.
Exactly.
So a lot of folks, increasingly, I see an interest in product. Product as a space has grown remarkably over the past decade or so or more. And there's a lot of interest there. But from your perspective, as someone who's built a thriving career in the product space, like, what would you say, and this is ambiguous again, what would you say to folks like looking at a working product? Like, what are some interesting things from your own experience that you would give as advice? Like, if I were to want to get into product today, like, what are some things I should think about? Where do I even start? There's so much knowledge, a deluge of knowledge out there, some not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's a two-part question. One, advice and from your own experience on growing in product and getting in there. But also part two is like upskilling. How do you stay ahead of the curve, right? To keep learning and being a forever employable product manager, pretty much.
Yeah, I think, so I believe it's important to understand, kind of going back to intention. What is your intention, or what are those things that you get passionate about? Because product manager can apply into many industries, and there's different types of product manager roles. So there's growth product managers, core PMs, there's platform product managers. And so in the case of those three examples, a growth PM is focused more on the metrics and how do we drive improvement in our conversion, or how do we drive improvement in our onboarding, less about the core experience, but more about the metrics. While the core PM is focused on the core user experience and that core problem that you're solving and how you might go about solving that.
Nice.
Whereas the platform PM is, at a level of it may be more technical, may have an engineering background, and they're thinking about the platform and how it can apply in many industries. So they're thinking like at the API level, how do I create APIs that people can call into and call out of? And so one would be specialization. Don't think of it as just a generic product manager role. Another example is are you comfortable talking to customers? Because there's actually, we have product managers that are within our IT department, as I mentioned before, and they're not out talking to external customers. They're talking to internal customers, building IT systems inside. And if you're, some folks may not desire to, work with sales team outside of the walls. They want to work inside the walls. That's perfectly okay. And maybe that's a better fit for you. So kind of try to interview different product managers in different roles and titles to try to get a sense of what their job is versus saying, hey, I want to just be a generic product manager.
Yeah.
The second part of your question, I think, is like, hey, how do you stay relevant, or how do you continue to upskill? And for me, the big thing for me is finding those mentors to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I think you do a lot of this. You try to get insights from different people and try to bring in best practices and really understand what different people are doing, and try and identify what it is, what skill sets you need to go develop. And
it's a hack.
It's a hack
for sure.
Yeah, if someone solved this problem, why not go talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Versus trying to learn it all on your own. Obviously, you're going to need to apply it in your situation.
Yeah.
But talking to folks is going to, shortcut you into solving these challenges.
Absolutely.
Really quickly.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It brings me to another concept, which I've heard you talk about. You the only other person I've heard talk about this. You know where I'm going with this? slash careers.
Yes.
But what does that like? Could you elaborate on that? When you say as having a slash career, what does that look like?
So this is actually a book, another book. It's by Marcy Alboner.
Another great book suggestion.
Another great book suggestion. But the concept is like you can have and she gives great examples. I love the book because it's not like so theoretical. It's very grounded in actual evidence, like people's examples. You can have your career that pays the bills, but then you can have like these side bets or these side hustles or things that you do outside of work that give you fire. Because one thing that I found is there was a points in my career in terms of leadership and growth where I was beginning to actually get frustrated because I didn't feel like I was growing. I wasn't getting certain opportunities because the company didn't have them for me.
Wow.
And so it was frustrating because I thought that it was like the company's fault. And I hear this sometimes from other folks at work where they're frustrated because, we're not doing something or the strategy is wrong or this or that, and they're not getting an opportunity. And what I learned is actually, you can go make those opportunities outside of work. And so in the book, for instance, Marcy gives an example of someone who's a teacher, but they're also like a flamenco dancer outside of work. Or they're an accountant who is a chef.
Yeah.
And so they started a website and built recipes. And so they actually had this outside interest and they developed that outside of work on their off hours. And I'm a big fan of that because I think it makes you a well-rounded person.
Absolutely.
And for me, like when I came to work, when I come to work every day, I just feel so much better because I feel fulfilled because I'm getting more fulfillment outside of work with the activities that I.
And now he's picked up photography. He's built that interest over the years, videography, photography, landscape especially. And he's doing that. He's having a blast. But then he built that over the years while having a main thing and built the craft and experience there such that now that he had the option to do it again post-retirement, he can do that. So I 100% agree. Like it broadens your horizons. It makes you happier in the interim while you're doing that. And you never know like where that takes you.
Yeah. And a lot of us don't know, you don't know what that is. And so you need to explore and you need to have that cushion. And it's like you're incubating, right? It's like you're incubating something. But in order to incubate something, you need to have a steady kind of foundation to work from. Because it's hard to just like go and quit, say, I'm going to quit, I'm done, I'm going all in on this thing. Most people would say don't. Some people say to do that, and some people have been successful doing that, but that's probably a little bit of survivorship bias built into that.
Yeah. Majority of those, I would say a larger percentage, right? It's crash and burn. Again, I can't emphasize de-risking things enough. It's like have something that is stable. You work on your experiments on the side versus having the experiment. We're talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
Versus having the experiments be the main thing. You're going to be stressed to the moon. But if you can de-risk it a bit as well by having a main thing and you work on those, then you have the option. You can weigh it with a clear mind. Should you go full time with that or not? But it's nice to have the option. That's been my experience. I've gone full time into things before that were risky endeavors and struggled through it, survived through it. I'm still here. But in hindsight, for some of those, it's like, probably won't do that again. Right. And that's entrepreneurship as well. Most people say if they know what they know now, probably won't start. And that's a blessing and a curse. Because so many entrepreneurs who go all out to and do things, it's like, if they had the full picture, they probably wouldn't. But there are those success stories that did because they didn't have the full picture and it worked out really well. And so it's a blessing and a curse. But if you have the opportunity, it's like, de-risk it by having the main thing.
Yeah.
And on this side will be where I lean from personal experience. one other thing, which brings me to small bets. We've talked about the small bets.
I love small bets.
Small bets community and the idea of, right, hey, don't go all in, make a bunch of small bets, iterate on those and scale them. So if you talk about that a little bit more, because I know you're part of that community by Danny Vassallo.
Vassallo, yeah. And so he was a former Amazon engineer. I think he's based out of Seattle. And, at some point he, was not feeling fulfilled at work. And he created this community, Small Bets, which the whole community is just built around this idea of having small bets or having a portfolio of small bets. And I think the broader concept is eventually you get enough of these that you can actually replace your income.
Yeah.
If you have enough of these small bets. And it's a lot of different people kind of this mindset gathering with ideas. They present kind of what they're doing, how they're trying to grow it. And they actually give very, tangible advice and a lot of, and there's just these free seminars that they give several times a month. And then there's a community you can chat with. Cause I think a big part of this too, the scary part is always, you feel on your own, you feel alone. It's
quite lonely.
Entrepreneurship. It can be lonely. And they really discovered something there where, you have a community coupled with content, and it's all instructional or helpful with the intent of helping other people succeed.
That is cool.
Great.
And you shared that with me a while ago, and it's part of the inspiration for modern different and some other small bets I'm making. Like I have a Chrome extension, some small SaaS utilities, communities, and this idea of like building useful things and building community around that and scaling it over time. You might exit some of them, you might sell them off, or you might consolidate and have like a parent thing that owns a bunch of those. But for me, it's a lot more fun when it's small bets over time, because you also learn a lot through the iterative process, and then it can flow into other subsequent ideas. And it's just cool to be doing that with other like-minded folks who are doing the same thing, making small bets. So I appreciate you for sharing that with me a while ago.
I feel like with you, even a big part of this, your enjoyment just comes from the learning itself.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes,
that's
inherently.
It's a great question. I pondered this, like, some people are just not as naturally curious, I think. And then on my side, arguably, the curiosity can actually be a hindrance for me, because you can get too curious. And I love solving problems. I love understanding people and how things work and things. But I also have to remember at the end of the day, you can't stay in curious mode forever. You do need to get to a point where you build, right?
Yeah.
So that was part of my learning as a product manager, is how to get out of research and into execution and getting something out the door.
I wonder if that's a natural arc for PMs, but let's put a pin on that. We'll talk about that more.
So I think for me, the curiosity comes you try to find this product market fit. Well, for me, it's also, and Naval has brought out this concept, Naval Ravikant, he says it's not just product market fit, it's product market founder fit. And so for me, being curious, I actually like, and I like helping other people. Well, part of this is, let's go do customer discovery together. I'd like to show you the techniques I've learned, but let's go help you figure out who your customer segments are and what are the value propositions you're offering for them to help them solve their problems. Because it's a messy process. It's a hard process. And then it involves a lot of data, which I love data, but when you're interviewing customers, it's not totally quantitative. It's a mixture of qual and quant. So I try to bring this all together and package it up in a way where I can help others. And so I've been working with the Maryland Energy Innovation Accelerator and startups that are funded out of there. And then I get partnered up with them to go help them do this discovery work. And I
pretty cool.
Leave them in a place where they're off on their own, or they can come back to me if they have questions.
Yeah. So to get actionable things to apply and run with, and then reach out to you as needed to augment that knowledge and execution. Good.
Exactly.
I like that. That's really cool. And I was saying I wonder if that's a natural progression for PMs. At least for me, I resonate with that because I'm also naturally very curious about things. And inherently, you get enjoyment from just the mere knowledge and learning something new and going down a rabbit hole and trying to solve a problem. But it's so easy to get stuck on the research knowledge phase because that's just fun. For you, if you just stay there, it's like it's never enough, right?
It's never enough.
Great.
Yeah.
But making that shift, add time boxes. I'm going to research for this long.
Exactly.
And I have to get to execution for the outcome desired. And then I can go back to research again. So it's a whole loop. And that was phenomenal.
That's awesome.
Over the past few years, that has helped me. I actually trademarked this a bit ago, and it's called MSD3.
Okay.
My own coined term for being able to rapidly go through ideas. So I have the map, which is the first phase of research, goes as crazy as you want. The sketch, which is make some loose associations. If it's drawing, right, this is where you make a quick sketch. Mm-hmm. No details yet. Maybe you draw grids at that point, again, using analogy of drawing. And then the other D is not design. At this point, you're filling it in some more, you're making those connections. And then you have the develop, which, you're building the thing or you're writing an article or whatever it is. So the tangible aspect of the work. And then there's the deliver, which is the last D. Because, if you don't launch it.
Yeah, I love that. And the time boxing aspect was like a huge unlock for me. You have to just draw a line in the sand and move forward. And the other part that helped me, a recent unlock, is think of yourself as an entrepreneur, and there's a difference between a wantrepreneur and an entrepreneur.
Yes,
the wantrepreneur is studying, reading, taking classes, but you never launch, you never tried to make that first dollar, and so you got to move from wantrepreneur to entrepreneur.
I like that a lot. Oh my gosh. And again, I think that's a progression because there's the one, you got to want it at first, but at some point you got to ship things. It won't be perfect.
Yeah.
But, making that first dollar, if we use the analogy of selling something, it's so rewarding. If you can make one, you're like, okay, I can make a bunch of ones.
Yeah.
It adds up. I can sell more. I remember when I sold my first digital product, or the first time I was paid for something outside of a job, was I designed a course and worked on a curriculum and a course for a company. It was internal. They launched it for their team members and customers. But that was just I think I sold that for probably a couple $100. But that was just great. Like, wow, the amount of time and effort I put into it was a lot more than that. But for me, it was just so amazing that someone was willing to buy this knowledge resource.
That's right.
And then it helped me create a lot more. But that was the first, iteration of my age when I started the agency years ago. That was the first thing I was trying to figure out, what's it, and I created a course. So that helped me launch and build some confidence for more. Eventually, it became web design and digital marketing and products and all of that. But that first sale was so instrumental in many more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I bet you just you said, "Hey, I can do this," right? You get that feeling like, the imposter syndrome starts to, go away a little bit, as we suffer from that, as product managers, right? Like, am I doing the right thing here? Am I, is this team on track and all those things? But if you're doing it on your own and you actually got paid, then you get some validation. Right?
Yeah. Like, oh, okay, there's something here. I can do more. Imposter syndrome is a very interesting concept as well that doesn't get talked about enough, I think. Because ultimately, here's my hypothesis. Like, I think imposter syndrome never really goes away. Because if you're doing bigger things and challenging yourself and pushing yourself,
right,
you always have a level of imposter syndrome because you get comfortable with something like, okay, you do more. So you're always operating at a slightly higher capacity than what you've always done. And since you haven't done that before, there's an element of fear and risk of, will this work out? Am I qualified for this? I've operated at this level and now I'm going for this. Like, can I really do that? And the Alt MBA talks about, I did the Alt MBA, Seth Godin's Alt MBA years ago. And one of the things we talk about is fear, getting comfortable with fear and dancing with it. So I'm putting the imposter syndrome and fear sort of together here, but it's like, when you get comfortable with it, the fear doesn't ever really go away. Because again, if you're doing things, crazy stuff and pushing yourself, you're going to like, can I do this? The lizard brain kicks in. Run, lion, you're going to die, or whatever the fear is. But as you get comfortable with it, like the fear begins to take a back seat.
Yeah.
So in spite of it, you ship, and you could argue that over time, as you get used to shipping and doing it again and again, the whisper of fear, you hear it and you're like, whatever, I will still do it regardless. So imposter syndrome is, and maybe even fear of X, fear of the unknown, fear of making the leap, is something that I think I'd like to explore a lot more. And what does that look like for those who, in spite of that, still go on to achieve so many great things? Like, is it a total absence of fear, or is it they just got a lot more comfortable with it, and maybe the voice just gets less and less and less, where it doesn't impede them from progress?
Yeah. When you say voice, that really resonated because what is that voice? Is it, my fear is people aren't going to like me, or is it my fear is I'm not good enough, or what is that core kind of belief? And where is that coming from? And do you tap into that and actually look at it and then try to label it? Versus ignoring it.
Yeah.
What's the hack here? And it's not necessarily a hack, but it's just growing, part of that growth, like you said, because what come to realize, I think you were kind of alluding to this, is as you challenge yourself and as other people are challenging themselves, they reach new levels. And if you're challenging yourself and reaching a new level, what you discover is they didn't know what they were doing. Yeah. They're just making it up and figuring it out as they go. And that's how we got this beautiful world we're in.
Essentially ending with, it's grateful to be alive at a time as this, where so many people have done things that he gets to enjoy,
right,
and maybe add to, but a lot of the work, you can say, of the language of English, right? But I don't think a lot of us in our lifetime are going to add new words to the English language, but we get to use it every day and communicate with it. Technology, right? We get to use it, maybe expand on it, but a lot of the core is already built. A lot of the principles and mathematical principles already built out. So it's very interesting to, think from that perspective, and be grateful for that. Like, there's so much that has been done, and you said, in our beautiful world. And how can we have developed that posture, for me, of awe? There's a lot of pain, suffering, pain, uncertainty, and chaos. But we think that there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of things to be grateful for, that it's a great fortune for us to be born in a time such as this, to leverage those things. So, when you said that, it just made me think about that.
Yeah, I mean,
to think about for a while.
Yeah, just going back, it's like things, horse-drawn carriage. Can you imagine what life was like so long ago? In 50 years, people are gonna look back and about the barbaric things that we were doing today. It's like, look at you. You were on a podcast. I haven't seen it for whatever the thing, the next thing is, right? And so tomorrow. Today's wants become tomorrow's needs.
Absolutely,
because of these just continuous advances we keep making. So yeah,
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Joel, for being on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you want to leave those listening with? Just one thing you want to leave the audience with.
I would leave the audience kind of with, like, my inflection was being able to, like, you have these small bets outside of your main thing and explore those, because you might just find something there. And what you don't want to do is just end up at the end of your career and then retire and then not have that next thing. Right?
Yeah.
And so you want to have that slash career, or that second career, however you want to frame that, because I think that keeps you engaged and interested, and in fact, you might find that your next passion. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.